Commissioner, we're ready to proceed. We're on page 185, paragraph 543, dealing with EcoBank Transnational Incorporated.
Just to remind you again, Dr. Machila, you're still under oath.
Yes, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner. Proceed. Commissioner, I'm on EcoBank Transnational Incorporated, paragraph 543. In his statement to this commission, Mr. Al-Tusadi makes spurious and false allegations against me in my capacity as a former non-executive director of EcoBank Transnational Incorporated, representing the PIC. I have no idea what I've done to him to justify this attack on me. I don't know him. I have not met him before. All I know is that he was dismissed from EcoBank Card Division. As a PIC nominee director on ETI, all my directors' emoluments are paid directly to the PIC. I didn't receive a cent from ETI. I have not even traveled once at EI cost to enjoy the first-class ticket benefit. ETI comprises of a very strong shareholders alongside the PIC, namely Nedbank, Qatar National Bank, International Finance Corporations, who are all represented on the ETI board. I have indeed fought for governance changes at ETI shortly after joining the board in order to preserve the PIC's investment. I am proud to say that ETI board is the most professional and diversified and represent the true Pan-African bank. The additional investment in the form of capital support from shareholders was done through board resolutions to shareholders, in particular major shareholders. The performance of ETI reflects the tough economic environment that the continent has gone through in the past 5 years. The board and management team have put very strong strategies to position the bank to benefit handsomely when the economic environment improves. The bank has turned the corner and is making profits. I have no doubt that it will deliver on the promise. The stock is tightly held with only a small free float and hence will move down significantly because of negative sentiment, but on very thin volume. I think Mr. Sadi should be encouraged to raise complaints he has with the relevant authorities in Togo, as ETI is based there.
No further questions, Mr. Commissioner.
Dr. Machila, I have just a couple of questions to ask. On the latest that I've checked, the share price of EcoBank is now about 50% down since the investment.
That's correct.
You are confident it will recover?
I'm confident that it will recover. They are now making profits after a very long time. I think the big issue is that they haven't paid dividends, and dividends are very critical for shareholders in the continent.
With regard to directors' fees earned at EcoBank, we have checked your statement, and it's correct that all directors' fees earned in your capacity as representative of the PIC on the board have been paid to PIC. Can I just check with you, when you travel there to board meetings, didn't they pay for your travel?
It's part of, yes, they do pay for travel. The travel that I was referring to was just an extra pack where they allow directors to travel anywhere in the world first class with their spouses.
That you've never used, you say?
That I've never used.
With regard to Mr. Sadi, he testified here that he was in a situation of a whistleblower at the time, and it is correct, as you stated, that he was dismissed from the car division of EcoBank, but he has been cleared lately of any wrongdoing, and He's not been reinstated, but that's the situation. But that's a side issue. You don't have to answer that. The last matter I'd like your comment on. In our investigations, we came across the fact that you were involved in litigation with the former group CEO of EcoBank, Thierry Tanang. Is that correctly
Tano,
pronounced?
Thierry Tano.
Tanang. Can you briefly tell the Commission what it was about?
Commissioner, I'm reluctant to go into issues because this was a court process in Ivory Coast, and the parties had agreed that any decision will be confidential. But there were lots of governance challenges within the PIC. I mean, ETI board at the time. I'll call it ETI for short. So those challenges resulted in involvement of authorities, regulators, and eventually the board was cleaned up, and a new board was put in place. And in the process, unfortunately, we had to part ways with Mr. Tano, and he instituted a litigation against EcoBank and myself, and all of those were dealt with by the bank because I was the director of the bank at the time.
Yes, that's what I wanted to find out. Did you, in your in your personal capacity, or the PIC, on behalf of you, did they pay any
No,
money or fees with regard to that litigation?
no, the PIC has not paid any monies to the litigation.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I have no further questions.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions here. The first one is just a broad one, and I'll come to specific ones. Just in terms of the PIC investment in EcoBank, when was that, and how has the share price sort of progressed? And there were corporate governance challenges. What were those? Just if you could give us a brief timelines and events around there. In terms of the share price, corporate governance issues, you know, you mentioned the oil price,
Yeah.
you know, fell in Nigeria, and the business issues also there.
Yeah.
Just briefly.
I will try. It's a difficult question now. You know, normally those things are well properly answered by the analyst who's responsible for EcoBank, because they will be in their portfolio, so they literally have to be on top of what's happening there. I think, if my memory serves me well, we invested in EcoBank around 2012. And we invested an amount of 270, I can't remember the figure.
Around 250.
Around $250 million. At that time, we subscribed for shares at 8 US cents per share. At 8 US cents per share, and that gives us almost 19% of shareholding in the bank. This was before Nedbank, which had a convertible instrument at that time, which they had put in earlier, you know, before they could exercise that. But they would subsequently exercise that convertible, and then diluting PIC down to about 13% at the moment. I think we're somewhere around slightly above 13%, you know, or the PIC, I keep referring to we, you know, at that time. Yes. So that was the amount that we invested, 250 million, and then I was appointed to represent the PIC on the board of directors of EcoBank at the time. Immediately upon conclusion of the transaction, in fact, I would say a few days or so before consummating the transaction, we learned that EcoBank had just bought Oceanic Bank. That was the time when a lot of banks were going under in Nigeria in particular, following the collapse of the oil price. And so the economy was not in good shape. A lot of banks were folding. EcoBank Nigeria bought Oceanic Bank. And it became a significant bank in size in the economy. And the process of integrating that into EcoBank was a minefield, I must say. That's probably where the problems of EcoBank emanated from. So unfortunately, our entry point was when this thing was consummated, and we didn't get a chance to review whether this is something that we need to proceed with or not. But we were convinced that it's something good for the bank to grow and so on. They'll clean up the balance sheets over time. But that literally took forever to achieve. The performance of EcoBank Nigeria was negatively affected by that. Even, I think they only managed to get it right in the past year or so, that for the first time they seem to be breaking even and getting closer to profitability, but it's been quite a difficult period. So the governance challenges at that time, I think it pointed towards the board that was almost, I would say, there were lots of friends in the board, if I were to put it that way, simply, So then, immediately after concluding the transaction, if I can take you back there, the CEO decided to retire. The then CEO, Mr. Ekpe, and Mr. Tano was appointed into the bank. I joined the board. Then I found challenges there. Some of these issues were raised by regulators around, I would say, conflicts of interest in the board. Some of the directors holding shares in the board, having funded them with margin loans, and some of the transactions in there, were almost creating conflict situations. So there was a lot of things that were not, kosher, but we discovered them afterwards, unfortunately, once I was in the board. And that was the start of the fight around fixing the governance and trying to get a board that is representative, that has lots of independent directors. Because I recall some of the directors that were there were, one or so was from a bank that had just gone under, and they were sitting on the board of EcoBank. And so, in South Africa it never happens, because the regulator is very strict around who sits on the board of a bank and so on and so forth. But I guess because EcoBank was a holding company and not necessarily a bank per se, the banks were the underlying investments or affiliates underneath. But itself, it was not, although we were trying hard to be regulated like a bank. Eventually, in our reporting, our conduct at that time, there was a lot of attempt to make it look like a bank, even though it was not necessarily a bank, but just a holding company. So those challenges, governance challenges, culminated in the CEO having to leave the bank, and through interventions of certain regulators, the SEC of Nigeria, the Commission Bancaire in Ivory Coast, and many other regulators, there was a push from regulators that the board changes, and this would be led by the biggest shareholders to restructure the board, put together a board that is representative across the different regions where EcoBank is operating: East, West, Central Africa, Southern Africa, and also the right directorship from major shareholders that were put there in order to drive not only the interests of the shareholders but also the bank as well. So in the process of parting with the ways with the CEO, he then launched this litigation, and then it was eventually settled by the bank, in an amicable way. The share price underperformed because of various reasons. First, the balance sheet, some of the things that we discovered, how Nigeria was financing some instances, certain instruments that were put in there, and a lot of other margin loans that were used to try and prop up the share price, it seems. You know, so the integration of Oceanic Bank, which took forever and took a lot of capital out of EcoBank. Other affiliates that were not doing well, for example, the Kenyan one, which was hit by interest rates in a big way. I think they took serious position in interest rate, and that risk unfortunately didn't pay off, and it cost the company capital. And rationalization of the bank as well, because it was just too much. Being in 33 countries or so proved to be quite a challenge, because some of the countries are small and you've got lots of them, and the cost of capital in some of those countries would be much higher than the return on equity that you're supposed to get out of the bank. So a lot of mismatch, and so that restructuring needed to happen, you know, to clean up to a point where the bank is able to now produce the returns or the profits, which I'm told, you know, just before I left the bank, it was already in a profitable situation and gearing up, you know, to be a lot more profitable. The share price does not represent the value in my view, because as I've explained, it's tightly held, very little trade, so the share price wouldn't necessarily reflect, you know, the real value in the bank. I think it's now closer to 3 US cents if you convert I think it's 15 naira. At the moment, divided by 365, you get closer to 3 cents or so. You know, so that's where the share price is. It has fallen by quite a lot.
Yes, from 8 cents, I think. Yeah.
From 8 cents
The 8
to
cents,
that
yeah.
amount, yeah. But I'm confident. I think it's now weathered the storms. They were in the process of trying to list a portion of Nigerian assets. They did a great job by listing a portion of Ivory Coast assets, EcoBank Ivory Coast.
Yeah, okay. No,
It has done well. I think they sold about 30% to the market, so they want to probably do the same with Nigeria once it becomes profitable, so that it can release more capital, and hopefully the share price will respond very soon.
Okay, all right. But then, given, I mean, thanks for that. But given the fact that these challenges were there, I mean, did the PIC do enough due diligence, you know, when it entered this bank? I mean, what was the risk report saying about this? Because it looks like there were huge problems in governance, and that when you compare them to South African banks like a Nedbank or so, I mean, those will be like two different management and systems and everything.
Yeah, I think I can understand the challenge. Governance challenges were there, but the biggest problem really was EcoBank Nigeria. You know, once it got integrated or bought EcoBank, Oceanic Bank, that's where most of the biggest headache came from. And simultaneous with that was the change of CEOs at the top. The group CEO retired, the old one, then the new one came in. Now, EcoBank, I think, was too aggressive in terms of their growth strategy. They moved from a few countries to 33 countries in no time. And that put a lot of pressure on EcoBank Transnational in managing the new affiliates and subsidiaries that were created in different countries, in different currencies. And so that growth was too aggressive, and the process of cleaning up took a bit of time.
But I mean, wouldn't you say the PIC should have benchmarked that bank with, say, our local banks here, to see all the flaws that would come about?
You know, you can benchmark, you know, but you'll end up not investing. I mean, there has to be an element of risk-taking if you can, manage it, you know, if you can manage it. We thought 250 we can put at risk to test the waters.
Oh, okay.
At the same time, we needed something significant that gives us, you know, a seat or two on the board to be at the table as well. You know, otherwise less than 10% we wouldn't get a board seat, and that's the last thing you want in the continent. If you commit and you are not at the table, you will have a serious problem, you know. So you have to be in the board at least, you know, be represented. But Commissioner, I think we did the due diligence as far as we could. It's a complex animal, EcoBank, and at the same time we were comforted by the fact that Nedbank was there as well, and they had a very strong relationship, cooperation agreement that technical and corporate agreement that they had signed, that we thought was sufficient to give us comfort that the bank is run properly, you know. So that's another issue. IFC is the biggest investor in the continent, lots of experience, and I think they've been successful. That's another comfort that we're deriving in getting into EcoBank, with very strong other shareholders that with them, I'm sure we will be able to achieve something out of it. But the economic climate, the challenges in terms of the growth and fixing acquisitions after an aggressive growth strategy, all those put serious headwinds in the performance.
Too much. It does too much. Okay.
Yeah.
The next one, okay, thank you. The next question is about, Mr. Sadi said that the credit rating of the bank was much lower than the one at Standard Chartered, you know, the bank run by Standard Bank here, that it was much, much lower. And they felt that, he felt that maybe the PIC should have bought a stake in that bank rather than in EcoBank.
I think we wanted to leverage on the platform of EcoBank at that time. In 36 countries, we thought the rollout of the Africa strategy will be a lot easier with this kind of partner. Now, if you talk about the credit rating in terms of additional funding that we put in the bank, because we were buying equity and we thought we were getting in at a very low rate of 8 cents at that time. And we thought EcoBank was cheap relative to most of the banks there. And the strategic partnership that we're looking at of rolling out the Africa strategy. I'm not sure if I've answered the question, because I thought Mr. Sadi was talking about additional investments that we did.
$8 million in the RCP that you put were coming there too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
they were coming there.
Okay.
So the other one that he spoke about was accounting irregularities, you know, that there were some accounting issues and financial statements disclosures. In a sense that one case he said that how you were doing calculations for foreign exchange was not regular, and that there were issues with that, with how you were translating the currencies to show in the balance sheets and the income statements.
I think there are regulators, there are stock exchanges that monitor those kind of things. The reporting, minimum reporting requirements. I would have thought that the bank had met minimum reporting requirements. Otherwise, it would have been a big issue with regulators if that was the case. Although, as I said, EcoBank was not fully regulated, but it reports to the regulator in Francophone, the banque, I can't remember the the name of the
The
regulator.
central bank.
Sort of the central bank
banks, yeah.
of the Francophone region.
Yes.
You know, there is those reporting. And also the other underlying subsidiaries like EcoBank, Ivory Coast, you know, in Morocco, Cameroon, Senegal, Mali, all of those will be under that,
Yeah.
that
So,
regulator.
but are you saying then his concerns about the forex translations are baseless? Are you saying they're baseless?
I think are baseless because there's a board and that deals with those, and I think that was dealt with properly. I mean, if there's something to it, I'm sure he should have gone to the regulators, and I don't think this commission is the right place to deal with translation, currency translation, EcoBank, really. I don't think so. I think the regulator should have picked that up, you know, and dealt with it there, you know.
Then the other thing he mentioned is on that $100 million loan that the PIC lent, I think, and he says that it was lent even the PIC knowing that there were problems at the, at the bank, and why did the PIC continue to fund the bank when there were problems there?
I don't think the PIC has necessarily lost money. I mean, on a mark-to-market basis, you can claim that we've lost money. But as a long-term investor, and we're seeing, just before I left, the improvement in the balance sheet, and therefore, potential of recouping that money, increasing on an ongoing basis. And by the way, as I said, we are not alone. We are with very reputable shareholders, including Qatar National Bank that came in later on to join. And these sorts of investments, because they are material, they are signed off by the board. The board that is represented by other shareholders. And so thorough work would have been done. Once the board say, we recommend this instrument, that you can raise money through this instrument to shareholders, I think it's good enough, it's more than good enough. So on that basis, I mean, we have to understand that the rating can deteriorate while you are an investor in the bank. Now, when it has deteriorated, do you then bail out, or do you remain there, or try by all means to support the bank to a point where, it can get off the ground? I think that's typical of banks, that they require shareholders that are strong, even locally. That's why, the law says you can't own more than 15% of a bank if you don't have the right balance sheet. And you are a bank for that matter, you understand what you're doing, otherwise it becomes a problem when they need capital to grow their business or defend, or fix their balance sheet in one way or the other.
One or two final questions. The first class traveling, which is at the bank there, I mean, the bank was not doing well, and do you think that that policy is still there? I mean, how do you fly? I don't know, maybe they do it in these countries, but how do you fly first class when the bank is not doing well?
No,
I know you didn't avail yourself to that.
Yeah. I think I guess, I mean, it's one of those things that you find in banks. I haven't challenged it, and I don't know how many directors are using it, really. I don't.
But personally, you didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, directors, I think we are about what, 15 or so? 15 directors at the bank.
Yeah.
So it's small in terms of.
All right. Okay.
But I guess it keeps some directors happy.
No, sure. And the PIC policy, what's that with flying generally? What's the PIC policy? Is that first class or business class?
It's always business class.
Okay.
If it's, I think it's more than 5,000 or so.
Okay.
The radius. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's somewhere around there.
But it's
we can
business
check.
class.
It's
Okay.
business class.
All right. Okay.
It's not first.
Okay.
unless you get upgraded, which becomes a problem.
Yeah, okay, no, I'm not complaining too much there, yeah, okay. And then the final thing is on the Mr. Sadi. I mean, you say you don't know him, you have never met, but why do you think he came here to assist the commission? And, is there something that you did or you didn't do for him, or you did against him or didn't do for him? Is there something you can recall?
I don't know.
That-
I mean, at this commission, I've seen people that I was close to, that we work so closely, saying that I don't lead, I rule, and so on and so forth. So I don't know how people have changed and what made them change and say things that they are saying. And Mr. Sadi, who I haven't met, obviously I would have seen correspondence and his issue at board level, taking that decision to terminate his contract, but I haven't met them in person. So I don't know what made him to come and present to the commission.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, Dr. Machila, why didn't you take up the offer of a first-class ticket to wherever?
James would have written about it, I'm sure.
Because I would have taken it up.
James would have made a lot of noise about it. James Nogu.
I don't think I've ever seen the inside of a first-class place in a plane. Don't know what it looks like. But I know that there are DGs who travel first class overseas.
Yes.
I was just wondering, I was just interested to hear what your explanation is. Why didn't you take it up?
Commissioner, I simply felt uncomfortable. I mean, that, let me skip this one, I just felt uncomfortable.
And you're talking about not knowing why people change. Isn't the problem maybe on your side that you didn't realize that you changed in your leadership?
I have changed.
I'm just wondering, is it not maybe on your
Well,
side?
I don't know. Maybe I changed after James Nogu. I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but probably I might have changed responding to James Nogu more than anything else. But I don't think I've changed, significantly to a point where, I'm a different person, really. I don't believe so. I don't believe so.
One just wonders why people say to this commission that people were scared of you, afraid, and so on.
I think it's a small number. In statistics, they say it's a too small a sample.
Okay.
Yes, I think we shall come there, but the culture of fear and all that, but we shall come there so that to understand what the issues were there. There were some issues there.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. With your leave, then we will continue and press as far as possible this afternoon to deal with Dr. Machila's reign of terror, as it is titled in his statement on page 187, but it is in inverted commas.
Yeah, no, I just thought maybe there's a word missing and that's alleged.
I was persuaded by the evidence leader to talk about reign of terror. That's why I adopted the title.
What we were thinking was, because it's quite a long section, so maybe if you could go to 192, say from 187 to 192, and then we can ask questions, and then we then proceed from TOR 13 and see how, how it goes, and then we ask further questions, rather than you read the whole thing and, we get lost in the process.
What's council's view in that regard?
We don't have any difficulty, Mr. Commissioner.
Same from this side, Mr. Commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll stop me. Okay.
Dr. Majilla, perhaps we can start off by asking where this name, the reign of terror in inverted commas, came from. Is that something that you coined?
I think it came from newspapers, from the media. Some of the reports were saying, they're heading the reign of terror. So I thought I could use that.
I see.
Hopefully.
Well, we'll see if it was a reign of terror. Would you begin at paragraph 548, please?
Commissioner, I'm on 548. The PIC had also been on the unfavorable end of press coverage after it emerged that the police were probing allegation of corruption by me in my position as then CEO. The allegations relate to an incident in September 2017 when an anonymous and still unidentified person accused me of channeling funds to, inverted commas, a girlfriend being Miss Prettylow.
Sorry, can we just make sure that I understand the position correctly? Probing allegations of corruption, you use preposition by, and I've written here against. Now, which one is it? Is it you who were involved in corruption?
Against me.
Allegedly involved in corruption, or the allegations were made against you?
Against me.
Yes.
Yes, against me. I have already dealt with the fact that the board dismissed this allegation on the strength of my explanation as well as the comprehensive internal audit report. Furthermore, the investigation and report by Advocate Geoff Bucklander, Senior Counsel, place my innocence beyond any doubt. There were a disturbing number of anonymous emails and leakages to the media that made various allegations about me. To illustrate how spurious, spiteful, and nonsensical these allegations were, one accusation charged that I have had used my position to have my son irregularly employed at the PIC. The evidence for this accusation: there was a gentleman who had been appointed the manager of the canteen who shared my surname. In fact, this Mr. Machila was not a relative of mine. He was also not employed by the PIC, or he was not an employee of the PIC, but of the company that was contracted to supply catering services to the PIC. This is a level of maliciousness that compelled me to institute robust internal investigations.
Dr. Majilla, if I can just stop you there, there's another allegation concerning your son that he was employed by a doctor survey. What do you say about that?
I heard about that, and if my memory serves me well, he visited one of the, I think, IT companies of Dr. Sesebe for a day or two to just go and see what development is about. He's not employed by Dr. Sebe or any of his company.
Thank you. Please proceed.
There was also an allegation of nepotism that I have employed my son in the risk department. Mr. Katleho Lebata was recruited to the PIC through the strategic partnership we have established with Fordham University in New York, USA. He is very qualified in financial risk management, but very strong in credit risk. He had a master's degree in investment management. I was quite surprised why Mr. Paul Magula was reluctant to utilize him in credit risk, but use him in market risk, preferring to use Mr. Chifango Nzaza in credit risk when he was actually employed in market risk. I came to understand later that this has to do with the allegation that Mr. Lebata was my son. He's not my son. However, there were also other very qualified individuals in risk who were sidelined by Mr. Magula, such as Mr. Kaya Zonge, Mr. Tonderai Manyumwa, who would have filled the gaps in credit quite well or quite comfortably, who were not used by Magula for this purpose. I also observe how risk and legal department in the PIC slowly but steadily being dominated by vendor ethnic group. I have asked the executive head of information and technology to investigate why there were so many information leakages. For example, the mobile satellite technology memo, Ascendis and Tosako deals. The confidential PIC memoranda concerning these finance applications have found their way into the hands of the media. The source of these emails was so obviously an inside job. The call I received on the 30th of August 2017 was also clearly from someone in the PIC. I think we talked about it much earlier in the beginning. Yeah.
The one with the heavy vendor accent or
That's
something?
the one.
Is that?
That's the one.
Okay.
Yes. I was very concerned about the vulnerability of the PIC IT platform. Not only was there a clear and obvious risk to 2 trillion worth of client assets if the PIC system could be compromised in this manner, but there was a real likelihood that potential applicants for finance will be deterred from approaching the PIC for funding if the confidentiality of their applications could not be secured, which could in turn adversely affect the PIC's business. Furthermore, as a key individual, I'm expected to safeguard clients' assets and information in terms of FIRES Act. Not much progress was made by the internal team in uncovering neither the sources of leaks nor the sources of anonymous emails. The IT team were able to identify the internet kiosk in Santen where some of the emails were sent from. I asked the team to make further investigation and reach out to the kiosk. Ms. Menye advised me that they will need a case number in order to subpoena the kiosk to provide more information. I requested Ms. Menye to approach the nearest police station to open a case in order to get the case number and get information from the kiosk. Ms. Menye recommended that she be accompanied by the head of internal audit, Mr. Lufuno Nemagovani, to open a case of theft of PIC confidential information using the leaked MST memo as evidence. They went to the Brooklyn police station to open a case. They later reported back to me that the police had refused to open a case as our document was not classified as confidential. Sometime around the 28th of September 2017, Ms. Menye and Ms. Simpue Maisela came to my office to discuss IT strategy. After the strategy, I made a remark that I could not understand why PIC is unable to obtain a case number so that we can subpoena the kiosk. Mr. Mansella confidently told us that he can open a case and that he has done so many times in the past. It's a piece of cake, he remarked. I requested him to assist. Ms. May and Mr. Maisela went to present their IT strategy to EXCO that day. I could not attend this meeting as I was tied up with other matters. The feedback I got was that the meeting became very chaotic because Mr. Maisela did not show any respect to EXCO members to a point where there was an altercation between him and the CFO, Ms. Muri at that time. The meeting ended abruptly, I'm told. Mr. Maisela went to the police station accompanied by Ms. Menye. Some few days later, I received a text from Ms. Menye that they have been able to open a case number, would have been able to get a case number. I was quite happy and congratulated them and gave them clearance to proceed to the next stage of the investigation. Following the resolution of the board on the 15th of September clearing me of any wrongdoing, I formally requested the board of the PIC to give me authority to appoint an external expert to assist in investigating the sources of malicious emails and leaks of PIC confidential information. I had to act decisively as the internal team was not making much progress in this regard. BCX was appointed to assist. I did inform EXCO at the meeting of the 18th of September that I will get external service providers to assist with the investigations. BCX advised me that it will be faster to scan the emails correspondences using MIMEcast, an email data security system of which the PIC is a customer. I had a strong belief that people within the PIC were behind these allegations, and I narrowed the scope of the investigation to cover areas where there was highest chance of leakage. The company secretariat, who are custodian of company records, the IT department, which naturally should be able to secure PIC information, the risk department, who should have ensured that PIC information risk is managed, the legal department, which is the custodian of all legal agreements and internal audit, which tested controls around the security of PIC information. I informed each of them of the affected person. As expected, they didn't like it. Some responded in a professional way. Some, of course, behaved in an immature way, but I had to act. After carefully explaining this process and its rationale to a journalist from the Business Day, it was subsequently sensationalized and dubbed the Reign of Terror. That's where it's come from.
My colleague is asking whether you know the name of the journalist who coined this Reign of Terror.
I will have to check. I can't remember exactly. You know. Nothing could be further from the truth. As I have already explained, the exercise, not lightly undertaken, was in order to protect the integrity of the PIC and, more importantly, the confidentiality of its clients and applicants for funding. I had no desire to spy on PIC employees. I think that was what said in this commission, that I was spying on employees, Commissioner. The first report of BCX revealed that the case number which was obtained from the police following the meeting of the 28th of September 2017 discussed above was obtained as a result of an affidavit signed by Mr. Maisela, where he had opened a case of corruption against the PIC CEO. This was the first time I learned that I was under investigation for corruption. The harassment continued. We, myself and the CFO, immediately received further emails and text messages from someone, James Nogu, purporting to be investigating corruption by me and who was going to expose this corruption. This person accused me of having appointed BCX not to assist in divulging the source of these leaks and anonymous emails, but to cover up my own supposed corrupt activities. Having heard the testimony of Mr. Maisela before this commission, I thoroughly believe that there is a high probability that he was very much involved in this campaign. Mr. Maisela has told this commission he turned into an undercover operative using the super admin rights given to him by Ms. Menye without my approval. He has continued to provide subs with PIC's confidential information according to his testimony.
with Libya.
Thank you. Mr. Commissioner, just a couple of questions. Did BCX sign an NDA?
They did sign an NDA, Commissioner.
Is it correct that Mr. Chris Polwani, the executive head HR, has super admin rights that were given to him by you?
I cannot recall giving him super admin rights, Commissioner.
My information is that even at this moment, he still has that super admin rights and it was given to him by you.
I don't have recall any such request from him, because it would have been in a letter addressed to Mimecast to give him those super admin rights. It can't be verbal, it can't be done any other way other than through a letter, formal letter.
It is interesting to note, Dr. Machila, that in paragraph 553, you state that I also observed how risk and legal departments in the PIC slowly but steadily being dominated by the vendor ethnic group. Isn't that in itself a risk for the PIC?
I think it's a risk because you want diversity in any department, you know. We're not saying there mustn't be other ethnic groups or a dominant one, but they must be spread across the organization and not concentrated in one department.
Did you take any steps to put a stop to this?
Unfortunately not. I think I didn't have time.
With Mr. Nogu on your back?
Yes, of course.
The last question, Dr. Machila, is I've just received, when I sit here, people send me messages, ask this and ask that. This gentleman you referred to, Mr. Labata, you say he's not your son.
It's not my son.
Do you know that, but it's after your departure, that he has now been appointed as in the risk department, in a senior position?
I'm aware that he's been promoted.
And that people who were his seniors in that department have been overlooked?
Unless
I'm not criticizing you, I just want to find out if you know about that.
I would assume that there must have been a process. You know, if I recall, before I left, there have been adverts about this position and everyone was allowed to apply.
But in general, sorry, you're not finished.
I'm done, Commissioner.
But in general, isn't it a major HR problem if in a specific department you take a junior who reported to, say, Mr. A, promote that junior over the head of Mr. A, and Mr. A must now report to the junior Mr. B? Isn't that a problem in any corporate structure?
If there's a process and transparent and open, they all apply, they get interviewed, and it comes out best, that's the process. I mean, I can contrast that with what's happening, I'm told, at the PIC, where somebody was very, I would say, junior in equities before, moved to private equity. They are now acting head of the department, you know, heading up very senior people who they used to report to. I think that one is extreme, in my view.
Can I just mention one department? And you know, in our environment, the legal environment, the pecking order is extremely important. If you're a senior of some person, you must be respected, and he's your junior, that type of thing. And we have in the legal department of the PIC that the former, I think she was the acting head, Pamela, a junior, people that she appointed and trained, one of them, a junior, was appointed over her head, but you say there's a process, but isn't it your experience that this is a serious cause of concern, specifically in a legal department?
I think I do comment about that situation later in my statement, Commissioner. And there, I'm simply saying we need to give people positions according to their strength, play according to their strength, and not simply put them in positions and set them up for failure. The PIC as an organization it's about investment mainly. Legal risk is very critical, and it has to be managed by people who understand it very well. And those who have strength in other fields, they can continue to perform that function. Now, the person that you're talking about was very strong in corporate, and we recognize that, and we gave them that responsibility. Unfortunately, they had a desire to be at the top, but there can only be one head at a time, unfortunately. And as I said, it was a competitive process that we ran, and they had an opportunity to also participate if they wanted to.
Well, two spectacular failures of this process, where a junior person was appointed to a senior position, is that of risk and legal, where Nesane and Magula were promoted as juniors to be executive heads, and it's a spectacular failure, as we all know.
They were the best for the positions at that time. We never would have known that we will have been in this situation at that time. They showed promise, energetic, smart. We all make mistakes.
It's not in investments we only make mistakes, but also in people.
Even investing in people as well, sometimes you take a wrong bet and it surprises you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Yeah, I've got quite a number of questions here. Just in terms of the corruption case, do you know where the case is now at the moment? Would you know?
I have no idea where it is now.
Perhaps
I've never been contacted by the police, nothing.
I can perhaps assist the Commission. I think it's now with the 6th investigating officer.
6th.
6th.
Wow.
It's been passed on.
Okay. Yeah. Well, is it going up or down?
If we consider the rank for you, Mr. Commissioner, it seems to be going up.
Yeah. So I just want to ask in terms of that process. So if a corporation, if the police are investigating somebody or a company, isn't it incumbent that the legal team of the PIC should know about it? It's a question I've asked, but I couldn't get an answer. Isn't it incumbent that the PIC should know about this case, the legal department, and can engage with the police around it and assist the police and all that?
I think, yes, they were dealing with it. I don't know how far it is, but we're working closely with Edward Sonnenbeck, Edward Nathan Sonnenbeck at that stage. Once this thing started, we had contracted them to assist. And I don't know how far they've gone.
Yes, because I was just wondering that could people just give the info to the police without the company knowing, That was an issue, do you know?
Are you talking about my seller?
Yes.
And
yes.
giving out of information?
Yes, to the police.
Yes, but we learned that in this commission that he was passing information
Yes.
to the police.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the PIC is doing about that.
Yeah. Shouldn't that be part of the legal department? If the police have got requests, shouldn't they actually ask the legal department and say, we got some requests and all that?
Yes.
Is that correct? Is that
Yeah,
the
we would
motion?
have expected that there has to be a channel of requesting information, in the PIC. First there is a information officer according to law, I think.
Yes.
Which is myself, and I've got a deputy who was the head of legal, I think,
Yeah.
that takes that responsibility. So we haven't had any formal request from the police for information of the PIC.
Yeah. All right. So are you saying is the process correct or not correct at the moment?
It's not correct because he's passing on information without us knowing. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Next one is, you know, like people were saying you are sort of employing your relatives, your son. I mean, it's interesting, why didn't they ask you? Why didn't they ask somebody who's seen and say to ask you?
I guess
Were they scared of you, the
it's-
fear
it's-
thing? I mean, why
No, no,
didn't they ask you?
it's part of the strategy to damage my name, Commissioner. I mean, people don't ask, they just go to the media or this sort of, you know, methods of disseminating damaging information via emails and other, you've seen the Nexus report, you know, they claim that they've approached me for information. They couldn't find me, and they go on to do this investigation and claim that I've received 2.5 million from the bank when I had nothing to do. I had no commercial relationship in my personal capacity with the bank at all. You know, so again, it goes into the newspapers and it becomes headline to further damage my name. So it's a strategy to just continually damage and damage and damage.
Okay. Next one, when you were cleared on the 15th of September, I think that's what, 2017, 2017.
That's correct.
The Mr. Nema Govani's report, was it part of the dealings there? Because I think the part lender report hadn't been done yet. What?
Yes.
When you were cleared, who cleared you? Was it the board and the internal audit report and all that?
The board on the 15th of September 2017 asked internal audit to go and verify the accuracy of the information that we have provided in response to the allegations that were made.
MST, the MST,
yes.
the MST issue, yes. Yes.
Yes. So and also investigate the correctness of the responses. So they put together terms of reference, and then I was interviewed at some point, and they reported back to the committee on their findings on the 29th of September. So based on that, then I was formally cleared.
Yes, but you were, so the first time you were cleared was on the, what, the 15th?
On the 15th, but the board
It was the board, yeah.
but the board still wanted internal audit to go and check, verify the completeness of the response to the allegations.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you were then finally cleared on the 29th.
On the 29th, you can,
And then
you can say
the-
so. Because there was an issue of Mulauzi, the 300,000, that was not captured in the terms of reference
Yes.
of the internal audit report.
Okay.
So that gap was missing. So on the 29th, they then said, ask him to verify if that was the case. And that's where they finally cleared me on that day.
Then this report from bad lender, what was it looking at then? Because it seems you were cleared on the big issues there in the MST transaction.
If
What
you
was the additional, parts of that report?
It was the full investigation from scratch.
Oh, from scratch, okay.
Because if you recall, for some reason, there were issues from other quarters that said the board erred when they cleared me.
Oh, yes, yeah, I can remember. Yeah.
And there were some people who had reservation around the board clearing me and questioning the process and so on. And this thing was in the media afterwards for a long time. And when Minister Nene came back, he decided to then ask the board to appoint an independent service provider to conduct, an investigator to conduct a fresh investigation into this allegation. Advocate Backlender, senior counsel, was then appointed to perform the same sort of information, but on a larger scale.
Yes. But when did you start to investigate the people? I mean, was it after the 15th clearance or the 29th clearance?
After the 15th clearance, I was specifically asked to secure the PIC environment. Because there was a worry already
to
from the
secure.
board that, yes,
To secure, yes.
that if these emails continue, we don't know what next. It may just be someone, who will eventually get access to the information of the PIC, and the fact that we're dealing with money, anything can happen. Do they have access to our bank accounts? Do they, that sort of security needed to be tested to make sure that they don't get into that space and cost us a lot of money.
Then after the 29th, then you said, okay, now you are free to start the reign of terror. Saba.
No, after the 15, I was formally given authority to start the investigations
Yes.
and secure the PIC environment.
Okay.
Then after the 29, it was finalized that all was clear, and therefore I could then start in-depth investigation into this matter. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so there was no, because some people said that, there were conflicts of interest, but you are saying that you were clear, there were no conflicts for you to investigate this.
Absolutely. I mean, the board had cleared me,
Yes.
and gave me authority to do the investigation. So I didn't see any conflict really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The next one is that you mentioned 4 departments that you were looking at: the risk, the IT, secretariat, and legal. Just in terms of your thinking, I mean, was legal also part of the problem in terms of leaks? Would you say, because in the past you mentioned 3 people from 3 departments?
Yeah, legal is also custodian of legal agreements.
Yes.
Yes. They handle sensitive information of the PIC as well.
Yeah. But do you think they were part of the leaks or not? Do you?
Well, I felt they could be. That time I didn't know, but I felt they could be part of the leak.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not saying much about, I'm just trying to understand what you're saying, And then in terms of those 4 departments, but it looks like when you did a list of the first 14 people, there was a list of 14 people that they said you were spying on, And
List
were
of
they?
14? No.
Yes.
I think I only had about 5 departments that I was looking at.
5 departments?
Yes.
And how many people within the 5 departments, can you recall?
I can't remember. It's probably close to 6 or so.
Yeah.
It was not a big number.
Yeah. But why were they saying you were spying on them? I mean, some of them were very, very adamant that you were spying on them.
I don't know what's the nature of the spying, because really all we did was simply to scan email correspondence on Mimecast. That was it.
And did they know? Because it
Yes.
looks like when you do that, the people should know. Otherwise, they will call it spying.
Look, I mean, first on the 18th, I met with EXCO. It must have been a Monday after the 15th, to tell them that I've got authority. I've been given a mandate to investigate these leaks. In fact, some of my colleagues were saying, but why don't we all take lie detector tests, because it looks like we are leaking, in EXCO in particular. They said, well, let's not approach it that way, but we will find the most, elegant and dignified way of dealing with the matter. In consultation with BCX, they said, well, maybe the easiest will be to scan the email correspondence, because these are emails that have been disseminated. So maybe if we can get to certain points in the organization, potential points where these emails could be emanating from, it will be the easiest, and Mimecast will be able to identify that, and hence these departments that we've mentioned that are handling that sort of information were identified. And before we conducted this, I mean, like Advocate Lube will do, he will just give you a call and say, hey, later on you are going to be implicated. So, the commission. So I also said to my colleagues, those that are affected, that we are busy with an investigation, you are affected, and BCX is here, unfortunately, to conduct the process. We'd like you to cooperate, you know. Please give them your cooperation. We're not saying you are guilty. Unfortunately, it's it's an uncomfortable process that we need to go through, That's what I explained to my colleagues before, this thing was
Before you did
conducted.
that, yeah.
Absolutely.
Then the final question is on, did these people, 5 or 6 people really, they went through disciplinary actions, some were fired, it was quite a process. Once you found out who the players were, who did this. Did you sanction these disciplinaries and the firings? Did you, were you angry about this and say, these people have breached the IT systems and leaked information, and senior councillor found them guilty, or, we need some witch hunt, I'm very angry, they must be fired?
Look,
how were you thinking, once you found these people?
I think we left that to a proper disciplinary process, subjected to a proper disciplinary process according to PIC policies. Those who are affected were afforded opportunity for representation, and we appointed an independent chairperson to run the process, at arm's length. I was not directly involved in those processes, only when I was asked to be the witness in some instances. Like in Mr. Paul Magula's case, I was asked to be the witness of the organization of the PIC. So we subjected all of those to the normal PIC disciplinary processes.
It was just a normal thing, you were not very angry about this and say, this must happen, this...
disappointed. I was disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually disappointed because, and people like Magula, for example, that we promoted from Norway, and, young, and really, I was trying to create, a very young team that will probably be there for 15 years while I'm gone, probably even do better than I did, being at the PIC for 15 years. Because that's the nature of the asset management. You need people who will be around there for a long time, trustworthy, and always acting in the best interest of the organization and so on. So I was extremely disappointed when I saw all of this happening around me with my colleagues that I've trusted so much.
Yeah, thanks. I'm done.
Dr. Machila, in the last paragraph that you read, 565, right at the end, you are talking about Mr. Maisela getting super admin rights given to him by Ms. V. Menye without my approval. What is the process there usually? Must you approve the granting of super admin powers to anyone?
Yes, at least someone senior. For example, Ms. Menye was reporting to Ms. More.
To the CFO.
As an executive, so at least one executive should be informed about this sort of thing, I would have thought.
And did you establish whether the CFO was or had been informed?
Was not informed as far as...
She was not informed?
Yeah, as far as I know, she was not informed either.
And this giving of information by Mr. Maisela to the police, obviously it would appear to me that he gets it from somebody inside the PIC. And who would do something about it? Would it be the executive directors, or would it be the board? And do you know if anything has been done about it? Because it's quite disturbing.
Commissioner, I don't know what has been done. I think he did, say it to this commission that he was still giving information out, but I was already outside of the PIC.
He did say that, yes.
Yes, I was outside of the PIC at that time. So I don't know what they are doing about that information.
I know you were outside at the time, but I'm just wondering whether you have established whether anything is being done about it.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't established it.
All right.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that, Mr. Commissioner?
I've got just one more question.
Sorry.
This, these terms of reference that we have, there's one relating to, I think it's either the very first one or the next one, that relates to the question whether the PIC, instead of investigating what was revealed by the whistleblower, it rather investigated who is the person who gave that information relating to you and what you would have allegedly have done. What do you say to that, if anything?
I think, Commissioner, it really depends how you see this person. If you see them as a whistleblower, then probably the PIC should have investigated these issues that the whistleblower is raising. But in any case, those have been investigated by senior counsel and subjected to other investigations. But we also argue that we don't believe this is a whistleblower because they are very malicious. They can say anything. And you can see some of the allegations and it's, yeah, from where I sit, I couldn't believe that they can be called whistleblowers. They can be given the status of a whistleblower, in my view. It's just something that someone that's just being malicious and really throwing as much mud as possible and hoping that something will stick in the process. That's how I see it, because the whistleblowing process within the PIC is properly defined, and I'm sure the employees know about it. There's a hotline, there is the board, there is even treasury if you want to work outside of the PIC through shareholders. So there are all kinds of, ways of reporting the issue in a more, I would say, dignified way than just splashing out emails in the manner that we've seen and using the media to support this,
And in your endeavors to secure the IT system and the information of the PIC, did that entail checking, or in inverted commas, the people are saying you were spying on them, sort of checking on people rather than looking at ways of securing the IT system? Because
Yeah.
that's where the spying allegation comes from.
Yeah, I think, Commissioner, if I remember very well, even the window that we gave to BCX or Nalid Consulting to run their investigations or collection of information was a reasonably short one, and then we took away those rights once they said we have all the information, and we closed. That was the only thing that we did around this matter. I don't know what other nature of spying it was. I've heard some people suggest or insinuate that their phones are tapped and gadgets have been placed in their offices, etc., etc. I don't know anything about that. The only exercise that we did was this one of super admin rights: collect information, close it, and then analyze. And that was it.
All right, Mr. Leber.
Dr. Machila, can I just take issue with you regarding your evidence that you would expect the head of IT, before granting super admin rights, to advise you or get your permission or that of the CFO? Surely if the two persons implicated are the CEO and the CFO, it cannot be expected of that executive head IT to request information to grant super admin rights. Would you agree?
Commissioner, on the 15th, I was cleared, so there were no issues, as far as I'm concerned, Commissioner. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Right. I'm going to ask you for suggestions. It's 20 to 4. What do you think we can deal with quickly, or shall we simply go
Chair, we
ahead?
can perhaps just deal with the next paragraph. It's incorrectly numbered for 434. It should be 566. Whether any director or employee used his or her position or privileges. Perhaps we can deal with that, and we should be finished by 4.
Apologies, Commissioner, with the numbering. This was our response to whether any PIC director or employee used his or position or privileges or confidential information for personal gain or to improperly benefit another person. The PIC policy was to effect that directors of the PIC cannot serve on boards of listed companies unless approved by the PIC board, which approval will only be granted under certain stipulated conditions. The COSEC, Ms. Matebula, was either ignorant or simply chose not to enforce this policy. For example, in the case of Dr. Clodanum Konas, who, while sitting as a non-executive director of the PIC, simultaneously sits on the boards of South 32, which is a listed company, Marianne Roberts, as well as now lately EOH. The COSEC's failure to enforce this policy has the potential to lead to a situation where a sitting PIC director might use his or her position or privileges or confidential information for personal gain or to improperly benefit another person, and furthermore may put the PIC in breach of competition and insider trading laws.
Sorry, the suggestion is we go through this paragraph and
then take questions on that.
right, Mr. Rulof, is there anything that?
No questions, Mr.
No
Commissioner.
questions.
Dr. Machila, I think this term of reference goes a bit wider than what is dealt with in your response. I think it further refers to, and I'm sorry to bring it up again, of pretty low. Isn't it also a situation where the the CEO of the PIC picks up the phone, calls an investee, the CEO of another investee company, and says, "You must please help this lady, she's in financial distress." And that person then sees that as, not as a request, but as a command. Is it not covered in this term of reference, that thereby Ms. Lowe was improperly benefited?
I think, Commissioner, we need to separate between Mr. Mulauzi assisting in his personal capacity versus the company that he represents assisting. I think we explained this at length to say, at first, there was a proposal of an enterprise development opportunity within Kifolile for this black women-owned cosmetic company. And that took long, and when they ran into problems and they asked me for assistance, then I requested Mr. Mulauzi to assist, and he was very happy to assist in his personal capacity. You know, but he came to this commission and said he was put under pressure, which I don't agree with at all. The request was a simple one. He either, accept or he doesn't accept it. I was just passing on a request of these ladies.
And I think a further argument that can be put on the table with regarding to this term of reference is that in the SA Home Loans matter, you signed the cession to Maponya, which after the visit by the officials of Standard Bank, it was immediately withdrawn. So the point I'm making, this can also be used as an argument to say that you did this to improperly benefit Mr. Maponya. You used your position. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I don't think, Commissioner, I've used my position here. On advice, there has been a process that we explained at length the other day that I would advise that the company is prepared to pay, and they will pay. They don't have the means to pay, and if PIC can almost loan them the money, I think that's the loose way that we use for that. They can then pay, but at the same time there are checks and balances. If that has to be done, there has to be a board approval for that to happen because it's a significant amount of money, and shareholder approval. Then the shareholders in Standard Bank approach us to say, we are not going to support this sort of move, this request, and then we withdrew the session. I think that's my explanation for this.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
I've got a question here on this TOR. I don't have specifics, but it's just a general question, so see if you want to answer it or not, yeah? When we began this commission, there were people, coming to us or talking to us that, PIC, advisory businesses, or there are people who are giving the staff of a PIC money and kickbacks and everything. And it was such a huge thing, people were talking about it. And from what we can see, I think the Advocate Lube say that, the forensics don't reveal much and all that. But according to you, what do you think? Did this thing happen? And is this something you want to put to bed now, that it never happened at the PIC, or do you know about it, or don't you know about it? There's been it's a big issue, and since you are here, I thought I must ask you. Yeah.
Commissioner, are you talking about PIC staff receiving?
Yes, staff, yes.
Kickbacks?
People at the PIC, people were saying they get transactions and then they give kickbacks to PIC employees and all that. Or they get advisory mandates and give kickbacks and all that.
Yeah.
I don't have specifics, but those were the general thinking when we started the commission?
I have no proof for that, but it's something that I've heard might be happening. And it's been a concern as to how do we circumvent that? What sort of processes can be put in place to ensure that this kind of thing does not happen? We haven't, formally tried to investigate if that is happening. I think we were overtaken by many things eventually. But for me, the biggest worry has always been around the transaction fees or facilitation fees that hopefully we'll have time to discuss and as part of my recommendation to the structure of the PIC. I think that's been the only concern for me as to what it means. I mean, we've seen, we've talked about SNS, we talk about, probably even Tosako that was mentioned, Ascendis. Those kind of transactions, can be very worrying as to what happens around these facilitation fees if there's no mechanism to make them more transparent and clear on how they are paid and who they are paid to. That's something that has always worried me. But I've never been able to put my energy towards resolving it properly. But we've raised issues around the fees to the board many times, and there has been an attempt to get into a debate on how do we deal with transaction fees and facilitation fees so that they become transparent and better managed.
So you are saying that there could be problems there, but the PIC hasn't looked at them?
It hasn't looked.
Yeah, and the problems could be in the transaction, advisory business, in the transaction fees.
Yeah. That may
What
be a
could be the
problem.
problem the chairperson was asking? What worries you there? What is the main worry?
Yeah, you talk about facilitation fees and the payments and so on and so forth, and potential enticement to some of the employees. We haven't proved that, as I say. And I'm saying we need to think about how to best make sure that if it happens, it's stopped, so that it doesn't happen. If it doesn't happen, but still put better measures so that it doesn't happen into the future, So that sort of mechanics.
Yes,
and I still believe that, the issue of facilitation fees, if it's defined properly and transparent and so on and so forth, it will go a long way in even pushing deals. You end up with bad behavior if you push deals and pressure and so on and so forth, because we spoke about investment banks and so on, how these things can be handled better, and we even said, why don't we pay them in a staggered way? But I was referring more to facilitation fee as opposed to transaction fees.
Yes,
because transaction fees and those things must be done immediately, because it's the bread and butter of investment bankers.
Yes,
They wouldn't want to be in a transaction. But those that says have facilitated this transaction in this manner, and they can prove, their time and time spent and effort, and can be quantified, then there has to be a way of rewarding them in a proper way.
Yes. But are you saying you might want to know where these fees end up? I mean, is that something you are saying that there could be a 50 million rand fee, but you don't know where it ultimately ends? Is that
Yes.
what you're saying? Is that something that can be done? Is that
Yes, checks and balances around ensuring
around
that our people, the PIC,
the staff members don't
are not finding themselves compromised because of this kind of things. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
If I can just follow up there. You have never discovered or heard that some of the employees at the PIC help in putting together a case for a transaction for which they get paid in the end?
I think that issue I had here, you know, when we were discussing, I think, ascendees, you know, that, and I did explain some history around Mr. Mlauzi, the wife asking to help, you know, and raising concern about the relationship between her husband and one of the employees, Mr. Magula, you know, and then that matter was raised here in the commission if I was aware that that was happening. Unfortunately, I wasn't aware that that was happening, Commissioner.
I'm done from my side. Yeah. Any
Excuse me.
follow-up question?
I don't have a follow-up question. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Suggestion?
Before we adjourn, Mr. Commissioner, with your leave, Dr. Machilla, it was brought to my attention by the media department during the lunch adjournment that it has been reported in a daily newspaper that this commission treats you unfairly. I was also mentioned as playing the man and not the ball. Can I just ask you, have you ever felt uncomfortable in this commission that you've been treated unfairly, that you've been questioned unfairly, that we play you and not the ball?
I think, Commissioner, where generally I feel comfortable, but there will be instances where this issue of power is mentioned in this commission. You know, that I'm a powerful man, and, you know, that worries me because it has implications in terms of how I respond to matters and what I can respond to and not respond to. I think I was happy with the commission that, you know, I was listening to this morning in terms of what is it that I can respond to, what is it that I know, you know, as a CEO of the PIC versus an executive director and an employee. So I think that was dealt with properly, and beyond that, I've never felt uncomfortable with the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Do you feel we are fair? We are fair here?
I think the questions are fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are very much fair and engaging,
Okay.
you know. The only problem was the power thing.
Okay.
Well, even the media has spoken about power.
But it doesn't mean the commission must say I'm powerless.
Yeah, we need to disempower you. You know? We need to disempower you.
I'm more than comfortable, Commissioner. I want to put it on record that I'm more than comfortable. I've come to this commission, you know, to make a contribution, and I'm sure I've been given space to do that without any fear.
Yes. The key thing for the commission is to find the truth, you know. So as we probe, that's all we're looking for. We're not after the man or the people who are after the truth. That's the key thing. Anybody who can assist us to get there, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I'd be worried if anybody were to say that you were a trick question was thrown your way.
Sorry, Commissioner?
I'm saying I'd be very worried if anybody were to say or allege that a trick question was thrown your way, trying to trick you into a corner. I don't think there's been that kind of question that was thrown at you. Or do you think there were some questions
No,
which were meant to trick you?
I think that was fixed, very quickly, because there were yellow cards that were produced under the table at some point. But we were able to resolve those, Commissioner.
Take it the suggestion is that we break here for the day?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Can we adjourn till 9:30 tomorrow morning?
Yes, indeed. We shall then adjourn until 9:30 tomorrow morning.